Thank you, Dr. Nandini-Kanan. I'm Jim Spohrer. I'm here at the IBM Almaden Research Center in San Jose, California, USA. Doug visited here many times during his career and shared many insights about his theories of augmentation systems and had a profound influence on IBM's approach to artificial intelligence, which is very much about intelligence augmentation. So today I'm going to share some video clips of Doug talking in his own words about the pickle that the world is in, because complex urgent problems are growing faster than our ability to solve them. And in order to increase the rate at which we can solve problems, we have to build collective IQ through augmentation systems. So there's a video clip of what Doug means by an augmentation system, which includes a human system and a tool system and how they co-evolve. And then we'll hear about organizations and how individuals, how organizations, countries, the world can increase its ability to improve through A activities, B activities, and C activities, including improvement in collective intelligence. Then we'll hear some thoughts about artificial intelligence versus intelligence augmentation. And finally, the discussants will share some thoughts. Our first discussant is going to be Doug's daughter, Christina Engelbart, who's the executive director of the Doug Engelbart Institute. Our second discussant is Daniel Arai, who leads a think tank focused on, among other things, augmented intelligence and augmented learning. And Daniel has a book on augmented intelligence that refers to Doug many times. Our third discussant is Mei-Lin Feng. Mei-Lin was a collaborator with Doug many years and on many projects around network improvement communities. And one of those we'll hear about today is the people-centered internet. So let's go ahead and hear from Doug in his own words about the pickle that the world is in because of the growth of complex urgent problems.
I emphasize the fact that most of my things sprung from a particular quest I've been after and the framework that I developed to think about it. So I'm going to focus on that quite a bit, and some of it is conceptual and not technical. So just to put that, though, to give you some reality, if possible, to hang that on to, I'm going to dive into some of the technology early and then go to the concepts and then go to a little bit more technology. And I fight about the concepts for, if I don't finish all the slides, I still get to it. Because that's one of my real failings is I start talking and I get gabby about sharing what it felt like, and I don't get through the whole program. So let's start with the first slide, please. When I was in just about this time, 35 years ago, I got this big kick that I'm going to do something meaningful and contribute to society. And I went through a whole bunch of analysis that I outlined a little bit in that paper and came up with a big flash about, hey, you know, the world really is in a pickle. Our complexity of our problems is growing and growing very fast. And the urgency with which we have to deal with them is also increasing. And that the product of urgency and complexity essentially is a measure of the difficulty for humans in coping with problems. So what happens when that difficulty surpasses our capability? Then we get farther and farther behind in coping with them. So I looked around and I realized, well, in 1950 or 51, we already were too far behind. So if there was something that a young man could do to help humanity cope better with complexity and urgency, that'd be a nice contribution. So all right, I commit.
And Doug committed his life to helping mankind boost their collective intelligence. So to solve these complex urgent problems. So let's take a look at the next video where we learn from Doug about augmentation systems. And I was going to say many times I would show up at Doug's house on Friday afternoons with my family and a bunch of pizza boxes. And Doug just loved to talk about this, and we had so many wonderful discussions together. So let's learn about augmentation systems next.
Okay, those things mostly are developed in order so they can interact with this layer of other things our culture provides us. Okay, there are a lot of things in there that are brought to you, tools and all sorts of stuff that let you live within a social structure and be effective at your interacting. And there's a whole subset of those that help you be effective at your working with knowledge work, et cetera, too. So take all those things together and call them an augmentation system. That's what augments humans. And for good practical purposes, let's make two parts of that. One side's got all the technology in it, and the other side has all the other stuff. So I call it tool system and human system. All right, training, knowledge and skills you got to install. Language, an extremely important invention. It just transcends as an invention anything yet we've come up with here. The methods and all that we use to knit together all the little steps that we can take ourselves during the day are extremely important. Our customs for working, our procedures, the way our organizations are done. They're all done so that humans can do something. So you look and say, within that sort of picture, framework, any given capability that a human has is really composite. It's made up of making use of a lot of these things, and a lot of these things with kind of skills and here and training and conditioning and all the customs and the things you just accept and all the mental skills and the language that you've learned in here. So that's the kind of thing you say, we've got to work on boosting people's capability. So along comes a lot of new technology here, and that's great. But the technology side alone isn't what's going to really make all the difference. So let's just go on a little bit more with the kind of picture. These were all in words in 1962. So this is a since then kind of way to graphically talk about it. So look at our real capabilities are sort of essentially hierarchical. You know, we learn a lot of lower order capabilities like writing and typing and reading, et cetera, like that. And then you got higher capabilities you build on top of those, and on up until you're really, that's you as an individual, a bag of capabilities, or that's an organization and the capabilities it has at many levels. So if we bring in something in here, you know, a longer lasting pen, it's going to make a little bit of an effect. But you bring in the kind of technology that even in 60, it was just clear to me the kind of things are going to happen. Incidentally, because I'd had this strange obsession, and I realized by the late 50s that it sounded very weird. It doesn't take much cleverness to realize that in the face of the kind of reaction I was getting. But so I got the chance before I could work on this to do some semi-theoretical work about what was the potential for digital complementary as far as the scaling and its size.
Doug basically came up with Moore's law before Moore's did. And this portion where he's talking about scaling is really where he saw that as we could shrink and increase speeds, digital technology was going to be flying. And so he always emphasized both the human side and the tool side, because if the technology side progresses and the human side doesn't, that's not good for our collective ability.
And speed. And I really learned a lot and opened up that and did dimensional analysis of it and began to realize that we scale things down, and the limit of how small and how fast the things can get is very, very small and very, very fast. And that don't worry, with the kind of pressure that was apparently going to be there economically and all for driving digital stuff, it was going to have these kind of curves like they've been talking about. So great. And it's going to take a long time to learn how to make all these changes over in this side of the world. So start gearing up and experimentally get the best things you can moving here and start learning about the changes in here, because that's going to be the really long time constant to make the change. So let's go. So that was the framework in 62 when I was starting to say, hey, I want to do things. And one of the things to look at in here and realize that most of what you hear about today and all of that is heavily, heavily emphasized in here. There's a strong intuitive feeling that that's going to make a difference. And you can even see in today's ways of doing things, yes, they can come in and make immediate changes. So this side of this two-part system has really been driving it. So what I've, just this morning, someone, I got this great thing, it's that these are semi-augment people, semiconductor people. So anyway, that's only part of the story. And what you have to do is the co-evolution between these things. And so how do you make an environment that gets the co-evolution? Well, that's where all the bootstrapping, the laboratory I said I wanted to do, et cetera, was going to be like. So come over here and start becoming more conscious of the candidates for change in this side. And so that's where I said, look, well, I can show more examples like that. But anyway, that's the thing constantly. So whenever you hear somebody say, it's got to be easy to learn and natural to use, put up a little flag and go question it. Because what's natural? So is the natural way to guide a vehicle is with reins? Well, that lasted a long time. No, what's natural is some way of balance that you can grow up in a culture and learn. And if you look at how much it took to learn to drive automobiles and own and operate them like that, it just make ridiculous the things people talk now, what they expect your computer systems learning to cost you.
So Doug was taught, and Engelbart's law isn't Moore's law. Engelbart's law is both sides, both the human side, the cultural side, being able to change and improve itself rapidly, as well as the technology. We've gotten really good at improving the technological side, but we still haven't mastered what Doug wanted us to master on the cultural side and together, and that co-evolution that he talks about. So let's go to the next video and just hear about A activities, B activities, and C activities, and improvement in Doug's own words.
World would be country X. So you can imagine there should be a real race to be the smartest one to strategically go after being the smartest country. and all of these elements. It's business, it's education, it's healthcare, it's legislation, it's executive work, it's judicial work. We're not going to get there by just watching the marketplace work the way it does. The marketplace, there isn't a driving function to.
The marketplace is improving the technological side, but the human side isn't being invested in as much as it should be.
Produce the most effective corporation. The driving force is to produce and gain market share. And there's a lot of lost opportunity that's going to be very expensive in the following decades if we don't go after it. So this one is trying to show in one sort of picture the essence of the strategies that we've been talking about. And in this strategy, we look at a given organization, one or two or n, there's these different organizations that are trying to improve themselves. So we talk about their A activities with human and tool systems supporting them.
When you think about the Indo-US Alliance on Artificial Intelligence, that's two, of course, and many countries could participate.
Here, just as down here, there's a human and tool system supporting this activity. So we're trying to say we want to make that organization's primary activities more effective. So in order for that, you have to have some activity there that's recognized and supported. This whole purpose is to improve the augmentation system, to make tools and human system changes that make the A activities more effective. And in a world that's changing rapidly, in which you want this B thing that improves the A capability, you want that to be more and more effective, you have to have something that improves its capability. So we talk about a C capability. In this case, these organizations have gone together to pool the C level stuff so that collectively you're producing results here that can come up and improve the B capability of each organization so it's better able to make its organization more effective. So what are the practical things? Well, B's all start reporting down into this activity, and we talk about this collective community as a distributed networked environment. Talk about a networked improvement community.
Networked improvement communities, and it's really important to invest both in the human side and the technological side to get that coevolution going. And we'll hear from Daniel about augmented learning, which is, I think, the only way we're going to be able to speed up that cultural human part is if we can create augmented learning. But let's take a look at the next video, where this one actually isn't Doug. I found a video that I thought was kind of humorous. It will show you my sense of humor. Doug had a good sense of humor. We were joking constantly together. And I think Doug would have approved of this particular humorous video that talks about intelligence augmentation and artificial intelligence. So Wolfgang Orlick, let's hear from you.
Shakes and classic Chevys, right? The good old days of the 50s. You had Marvin Minsky in MIT, and you had Doug Engelbart at Stanford. And those two, let's just say, had a discussion. In the 50s, they met, and Marvin Minsky was saying, we're going to make machines think. We're going to make machines conscious. And Doug Engelbart's like, what are you doing for the people?
So you're doing for the people.
And then fast forward about a decade, the Mother-All demo's down. It's 1968, the Mother-All demos. If you haven't seen this demo, after this video, go check it out. Doug Engelbart debuting the technology that formed the basis of what we do today. The mouse, the cursor, right? It's amazing stuff. And one of the things he showcases is a shopping list. And Marvin Minsky blasted him. Why are you showing a shopping list? We have machines that can think and do all this for us in just another decade. Now, granted, it's been, what, 40 years, 30 years? 40 years. And the most used AI thing goes something like this. Alexa, add this to my shopping list. Point Engelbart. The point is that there is a tension between AI, artificial intelligence, and IA, intelligent augmentation, right? And the tip for you is this: when you think through where you're going to add AI and machine learning, you need to think through some specific use cases. I'm going to list those in a moment. But the key point is they need to be fostering and enabling your people. If we just put in more tech,
if we just put in more technology, we're not getting the coevolution. We've got to improve the human side as well, and that requires investment, and augmented learning is probably an approach. But you can also think of the cultural side as things like open source. When IBM is collaborating with Google on TensorFlow and Facebook on PyTorch, these are various companies that are competing in the market, but we're collaborating through open source. So that's a cultural change. That's the kind of stuff that Doug was talking about with his network improvement communities. So now I'd just like to, Christina had issue come up at the last minute, wasn't able to join us, but she said, Jim, please share this video. So let me share the first discussant. Christina Engelbart this video, which I think you'll enjoy. And she summarizes Doug's thoughts so beautifully. I mean, being his daughter, obviously she spent the most time with Doug.
Date. Before we launch into the future, let's key in on this guy and see what he would have to say. And what I believe that would be great effort, guys, noble effort, but there's one small problem. So this man was not a pessimist, quite to the contrary, but he was a realist, and this is what kept him up at night. What does that look like? So basically, he thought it's a race. The digital technology revolution is just soaring, the exploding rate and scale of change. On the other hand, we have organizations trying to systematically improve for the future and become more highly evolved. But the explosion of digital technology is really putting a tremendous pressure on the organization's ability to do that. Because it's taken a life of its own, it's on a different trajectory. And so there's so many technologies these days that have not evolved in symbiotic relationship with the organizations. There's wonderful emerging technology coming out, on the other hand, who's pioneering those really important capabilities that Doug Engelbart started years ago. So to understand this gap is a widening gap, and the formation of digital technology is increasing the speed of everything. So it's increasing the speed of all the other global issues, including climate change and all of that. And climate change itself is a threat multiplier. It exacerbates other threats on the planet. The explosion of digital technology unchecked is itself also a threat multiplier, and that gap is a cause for concern. In fact, my father believed that it was extremely serious, and that's why he dedicated his entire career to that. The gap itself it represents a risk of untold caliber, and including the potential for collapse, for extinction. On the other hand, it represents an opportunity, a golden opportunity. We're really rising to the occasion and getting that capability in our organizations to jump the curve and get ahead of it. So what he saw was the single greatest existential challenge of our time, not climate change, not cyber war, not population explosion. The single greatest challenge and opportunity is our ability to raise the curve on our collective ability to collectively solve important problems. So that being the single greatest existential challenge of our time. And that's why he dedicated his life to solving that problem, starting from the beginning, and all the technology he prototyped, it was all in the service of prototyping the organization of the future that would be fast and flexible and highly evolved so that it could tackle important problems. And I think they did a pretty good job, but a lot remains to be done. And so this takes us back to the slide that you saw earlier in that wonderful video. This is the cornerstone of a larger strategy that he came up with from the very beginning and refined all throughout his career. So he put it in terms of a bootstrap paradigm map, because the idea is that we need to be bootstrapping our capabilities. We need to be bootstrapping our organizations. We need to be bootstrapping our collective IQ. So what are the limiting factors? And what he came up with was the single greatest limiting factor is the paradigms that people bring to looking at the world, how they fit in the world, and where our world needs to go. What are the opportunities for change? So he created a paradigm map. And so all of these tiles on there are what he thought where we needed to shift our paradigms in order to prepare for the future, jump the tracks, and get on the right trajectory. So it goes around there and all that. So now one of my jobs has been to try to distill all of that into an actionable strategy that organizations can apply within their own teams and initiatives and companies and institutions. 5 accelerators. So I'm not going to go into them in detail tonight. That would be for another time, but it covers all the key things that he introduced in that video, which are essential to galvanizing that capability and getting them into the hands of the groups and organizations and networked initiatives that are trying to tackle the toughest challenges. So this brings us to what he thought was the greatest opportunity for our time, the greatest opportunity to leverage our collective smarts to launch a serious effort improving collective IQ. He started that in the 1960s, but it kind of trailed off, and what happened? So this is really a serious problem, and we need a serious effort to do that. Focusing also how the collective IQ can be leveraged to improve how we improve. That ABC and the way that we have to accelerate how we improve, not just improve the capability. So who's the customer for this? Who's the end customer? So think of it as a networked improvement initiatives. These are the initiatives like the ones that you're going to hear tonight. It's all the initiatives and organizations that are trying to tackle those toughest problems. And one of probably the greatest opportunity for single point of leverage in all of this is to start networking the people, the organizations, the initiatives that are working on the toughest problems and bring them together to help collectively guide us into this. So we haven't scratched the surface, and my dad would be the first one to tell you, noble effort. But here's another really important point where he was talking about the importance of the co-evolution, to a reminder that technology should not aim to replace humans, rather amplify human capabilities, whether it's the individual, whether it's the team, the initiative, the organization, the institution, or society at large. When you think of Doug Engelbart, please, the least important question you can ask about Engelbart is, what did he build? The most important question being, what world was he trying to create?
Exactly. So let's just pause for 1 minute, because I think the point I want to emphasize before we hand it over to the next discussant, Daniel Rye, to talk about his work. A lot of people that I knew said, Jim, Doug's an idealist. His biggest idea is that people have to work together collectively, and that's just not the way people are. And I disagree. I think Doug was right. And if you haven't read this book, Humankind, by the Dutch historian Rutger Bregman, please read it, because a lot of what is taught about people is wrong. And I'll just leave it at that. Doug was right, and we need to boost our collective IQ. As Christina said, it is the existential crisis of our time. All the other problems are real too. Climate change, cyber war, on and on. Those are real problems. But the existential one is we're not improving our collective IQ fast enough. And in order to do that, we have to invest as much in the human system as we do in the technological system. The market is taking care of the technological system, and governments are as well. But the augmented learning is what we really have to accelerate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Daniel. Thank you.